Some of you may have noticed my red sneakers. My brother Scott, who has Down syndrome, helped pick these out, and I'm just glad that I did not allow him to choose the rest of my wardrobe. Otherwise, I'd look like a large red banana standing up here. Scott and my mother lived with me for a number of years before my mother passed away. My mother started to do her estate planning when she was 69 years old after a couple of her friends passed away and some other things happened, and she went to an elder law attorney to have a special needs trust drawn up and so on. And it was in the middle of this process that she was diagnosed with terminal colon cancer. So all of these conversations that we had been having, where, Mom, when you're no longer around, in a galaxy far, far away, all of a sudden that was going to be within 6 months. And so those conversations became much more difficult. About 2 weeks before my mother died, we set up a hospice situation in my house on the second floor. My brother Keith, who lives in Wyoming, flew in. My sister, who lives locally, was coming by every night. And one evening, my mother called us up to the room, and she said, "I fought as long and as hard as I can. I'm ready to go." Now, I don't know whether anyone is really ready to hear that from their mother and the last surviving parent. I know that the three of us were really not, and we came out of the room. We all had tears in our eyes. And we walked down the hall, and we got to the steps, and at the bottom of the steps was Scott sitting in a chair, and his eyes were just glazed over. He was terrified. And he obviously knew that something was very, very wrong. And so we tried to get him to verbalize what he was feeling. And finally, he just threw out his arms and he says, "Now who's going to cook for me?" And exactly, we chuckled because it just seemed so incongruent with the situation. But really, what he had done in his own way was bring everything down to the very basics, to the foundation. Because it wasn't just about who is going to cook for him now, although Scott is very into his food. But it was about the person who had been there his whole life, who had been there for him when he was sick, who had given him his hugs and kisses. This person was no longer going to be around. And I can only imagine how defenseless he was feeling. So a couple of weeks later, Scott went off to work. He works at HRC in the sheltered workshop. And by the time he came home, I was not only his brother, I was his guardian, I was his caregiver, and I was the trustee for his trust. So I took care of Scott. Scott lived with me for another 2 years. I was his caregiver, and we found a terrific opportunity with HRC. They had built a new group home a mile from where I live. He moved in there with 5 of his friends, which is where he's living now. And it's really this experience that I bring to the table when I work with parents, that along with my 20 years as a certified financial planner. And what I do is I help parents like you plan for the future of your special needs child. Make sure that your child is going to have the opportunity to live his or her life to the fullest. And I talk to a lot of groups of parents, and I know that you are being hit by a ton of stuff, especially at this point. And part of my job is to really help parents also get unstuck, to help them move forward. So what I want to do tonight is talk about some of the significant things. Everything is significant, but we're going to try and cover some of at least the high points tonight. And I want to talk, excuse me, it's been a long week. I was just telling somebody this is my fourth one this week, so I'm hoping that my voice stays. I want to talk about preserving government benefits, supplemental security income, SSI, and Medicaid. Want to talk about guardianship, want to talk about special needs trusts and strategies for funding these trusts, and talking about providing future guidance for your special needs child, which will involve a letter of intent. So with that, let's get started.